I know the Celtics and the Nuggets played last night. Anthony Edwards was awesome as well. But I based certainly on the conversation we just had off the air, we got to start with the fact that Jake Paul and Mike Tyson are fighting. Wow. On Netflix.
Shocking.
This is where the hell did this come from?
I mean, it's been in the works for some time now.
Yeah.
Jake Paul just this past weekend beat a guy named Ryan Borland, who is a oil rigger in North Dakota. So Jake was on.
He's running out of people to fight.
Exactly. Jake, the last couple of fights, has been going down this traditional boxing path. Now he is making the hard pivot back to celebrity boxing, and he's doing it against arguably the biggest star in modern boxing history in Mike Tyson. I was taken aback by this, Rich, because I knew that Jake had been on the hunt for a big name. I just figured it was going to be someone like Conor McGregor, who has expressed interest in fighting Jake in the past. A rematch with Tommy Fury, who Jake fought last year. I didn't think a Tyson fight was going to happen, but here we are with the biggest or one of the biggest social media stars ever, biggest or one of the biggest boxing stars ever, fighting on perhaps the biggest global platform ever. I think this is going to be an event unlike any other.
So anybody who gets Netflix will just be able to just watch that like you're watching the latest Adam Sandler movie?
It's
is that basically what it is?
Details are still, there's a couple of details still scant. One is, well, it's not going to be pay-per-view. It is going to be on Netflix,
Right.
so it's going to be streamed.
You just have to pay for Netflix.
Right.
That's about it.
Exactly. And because of that, I think this has the potential to be the most viewed boxing event ever. I mean, there have been some widely watched boxing events. If you go back to the 70s and 80s when this was on basic television, ABC fights, those put up huge numbers. This one, though, I could easily see this fight attracting 100 million viewers because globally, Tyson has a name. Amongst a young audience, Jake Paul has a huge name. So I think, regardless of what you think of what this fight is in the ring, and we can get into that, that the audience for this is going to be absolutely massive.
Massive. So what is a 58-year-old Tyson going to look like against, how old is Jake Paul again?
Jake Paul is 27, so a 31-year age gap between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. Jake Paul has been an active fighter. He fought 4 times in basically one calendar year. Mike Tyson has not been in the ring since that Roy Jones exhibition 4 years ago. I know people have kind of pointed to Mike's social media pad work, but Mike himself has come out and said, like, every time he does one of those mitt sessions, he needs like a week to rest and take time off and let his body recover. So you've got the once styled baddest man on the planet who perhaps can muster 30 good seconds of power punching against a YouTuber turned boxer who has become, in my estimation, a pretty good boxer. So that's a long way of saying I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to see in the ring on July 20th.
Which is maybe its greatest selling point from the Netflix point of view, or Jake Paul and Tyson. But
on a real note, though, Rich, like I do wonder what the state of Texas is going to do there. Now, this was billed in the press release as, I'm maybe going to say this wrong, a boxing mega event. They didn't say like a sanctioned 10-round fight. And that's probably because Texas has to figure out what they're going to do with it, right? If they make it a exhibition like we had with Roy Jones and Mike Tyson, shorter rounds, six rounds, that's one thing. If they allow it to be a traditional fight, which I really can't fathom. Like, how can you sanction Mike Tyson
at age 58?
At 58?
He was using a cane a couple months ago, wasn't he?
The craziness of all this against a 27-year-old guy in Jake Paul, who, say what you want about him, he can punch. He really can punch. That's the great unknown in all this.
Oh, my God. Well, when was Tyson here? 8 years ago? 7 years ago?
Yeah.
You want to just quickly look it up?
Sure.
Because he was sitting in that chair. It's the one time he's been here in the studio. And I've told this story before, so for those out there listening who...
actually,
March 2015, right?
March of 2015.
Okay, so we used to have a radio clock where I would have to take a 60-second break right around now, middle of the hour, at some point. It was at my discretion. And I didn't really like it because, again, in the same way that you just mentioned, like, busting up a flow, a conversation's going well. I knew I would have to stop it in the middle for a 60-second break. I wasn't a big fan of it sitting from this chair. Certainly when Tyson's coming here, I wanted to get a conversation going. So that said, I asked Tyson right around now in the hour, hey, how many rounds can you give me right now? And so this was 2015. This is 9 years ago.
Yep.
Okay. So just as he's about to turn 50, I'm like, how many rounds can you give me right now? He goes, I don't want to answer that. And I said, why? He said, because anytime I think about, getting back in the ring or anything associated with the boxing, it puts me in a very dark place. At which point I'm like, well, let's take that break right now. And I was happy to take a break. He says, it puts me in a dark place. So maybe he gets out there. That's like, what are we going to see? What will we see if he really, the old Tyson potentially just shows up even for a flash? Look, you know what I mean? Like
Tyson, when he fought Roy back in 2020, actually looked pretty good. And there were times during that fight that I thought to myself watching it, I'm like, if Mike turns it on and really lets his hands go, he's going to knock Roy out. I mean, Roy, another long since faded former great, I think he was even more punchy at that point. And Roy was a smaller fighter coming up in weight to fight Mike Tyson. But I remember watching that fight thinking, like, if Tyson wanted to, he could dial it back, land a big left hook, and this fight could be over. So I still think that's in Mike Tyson's repertoire. That's why, like, the first round of this fight against Jake Paul, if Mike wants to make it interesting, it could get really interesting. If it goes beyond that, like, remember, when Mike retired in 2005, he was bad, right? He got knocked out by Kevin McBride. He had no passion for the game, didn't want to be in boxing anymore, was only there for the paycheck. Then he went on and did, I think, one or two of those exhibition fights that were weird with headgear. But if he wants to just turn back the clock for a very brief period of time, I think he can still do it. That's why I think the first round, if he decides, if he becomes, go back to when he fought Peter McNeely. Peter McNeely, remember that fight, came just bull in a china shop, rushing Mike Tyson, which was insane because then he got his clock cleaned right after that adrenaline rush left him. If Mike comes out and goes right at Jake Paul, I don't know what can happen. I don't know what can happen.
You're saying there's a chance, though.
I think, look, but again, it's not even a round. Forget that. Like 30 to 40 seconds. Because after 30, 40 seconds, he becomes a nearly senior citizen in the ring. All right? Like, because, and look, it's different because Evander Holyfield was not the puncher that Mike Tyson was. And Evander Holyfield fought a guy named Vitor Belfort, who is big, strong, and a little bit crazy. But if you watch what happens to an old man in the ring when they're in with a young, strong guy. Evander Holyfield, when he fought in Florida a few years ago, he got a beating. And that was tough to watch because at some point you're watching and going, all right, this isn't fun anymore. I don't want to see 55-year-old Evander Holyfield getting his head caved in by a younger guy. Similarly, I don't want to see Mike Tyson getting carved up by a 27-year-old Jake Paul.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.